All right, here we go. Salute to NBA Nation on this Wednesday afternoon. Another edition of the NBA Report, man. We got a big doubleheader today. The NBA season is over. The Nuggets have raised the Larry O'Brien trophy, but the offseason has begun, and it is set to be a wild one. Joining us first is our guest. He covers the NBA for SpotRac and also hosts his own podcast called The Front Office. Big time on these Twitter spaces, but someone familiar to myself and Alex, and that is Keith Smith. And then at 12:30, we have Mark Jones from ESPN to come in and wrap up the NBA Finals, man. So salute to everybody in the chat. Hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Keith, welcome back, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be Mark Jones' warm-up act, man. That's a big get. I'm happy for you guys.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it. Absolutely appreciate it. So, yeah, let's get right into it, man. Lots to talk about. You know, finals are over, and as we kick into the new league season, there's some salary cap ramifications that could come into play here that could shape this league for years to come, man. Let's just give the people, high level, what this new cap will entail and what some of the new penalties will be for teams that are struggling to manage their salary cap.
Sure. So to keep it, super high level here without, putting everybody to sleep in their midday nap, it is essentially what's happening is in the new CBA, which will start on July 1st. The NBA is trying to force the teams that are way up here in salary down and the teams that are way down here in salary up, right? They want everybody to be kind of playing around the same area in the middle. So what they've done is they have made it very restrictive on those most expensive teams. So let's just call it like it is. Warriors and Clippers, right? Like that's the teams that are out there right now that are immediately facing this. There's a handful of other teams that have concerns, but those are the two teams that are already, way past that. So what they've done is, in lieu of a true hard cap, which was never going to be a thing, if that was something the league was still pushing, we'd be talking about a lockout and a whole boring summer to come instead of, all the fun we usually have. So what they did was they made it extremely restrictive on those most expensive teams. So what they're going to do is over this year and next year. So this is kind of a 2-year phase-in process, if you will, with a lot of these changes. Those teams will effectively be eliminated to re-signing their own players, signing their draft picks, and signing minimum contracts. So the example I always use is the Warriors last summer, super duper expensive, use the taxpayer MLE to go get Dante DiVincenzo, and a whole bunch of people are like, how does this keep happening? Like, how do they keep adding talent to this team? They won't be able to do that anymore. So that's going to be out the window. They and that starts right now. They won't have that taxpayer. The other things that you may have heard, like trade rules changing and potentially freezing draft picks and trade down the line and draft picks dropping to the end of the rounds, those will all start a year from now in the summer of 2024 is when most of those rules will kick in. Basically, because there's such big changes coming, the NBA is telling these teams, you've got a year to get yourself in line, get it figured out, and then we'll go forward. And if you're still super expensive, then here's all the things you get dinged with. On top of that, less concern for fans, obviously concern for ownership groups. The tax penalties are increasing. It's going to cost you even more money. We all hear, Warriors sign a guy for $1 million. That really costs them like 10. That could be like 15 or 20 moving forward, and those sorts of things with the tax penalties. And then on the other end, just very quickly, they made the exceptions more valuable. Both the non-taxpayer and the room exceptions increased a good amount in first year salary amount. You can offer longer contracts on the room exception now. So those teams that are playing with cap space or with their exceptions will come up, and in addition to entice, or let's call it what it is, force those teams to spend more money, you can no longer sit, $40 million under the salary cap going into to the actual regular season. You could do that in the off season, but in the regular season, they're going to put in restrictions on that has no benefit for you anymore. So essentially what they're trying to do is force everybody to spend a lot of money and bring some of those teams down into range, bring those other teams up, create parity, and we'll see how that happens.
What with the cap floor, right? I believe it was which team was it last year that didn't hit it? Was it the Spurs where they
Spurs,
didn't?
yeah, they finished a good deal under it.
Right, so they didn't hit the cap floor, so that difference between the floor and wherever they ended up, that gets dispersed amongst the team. So are we
Correct.
saying that going forward, is that benefit no longer available to these teams?
Yeah, so that won't really be a thing once the regular season starts. You can be way under the floor in the offseason, right? Because that's how you use cap space and everything else. But once the regular season starts, what's going to happen is they're going to drop, let's say you're 20 million under the floor, they're going to drop a $20 million cap hold on your book that makes you basically to the floor. Now, in terms of actual salary, that would still happen, right? Those players would still get paid out and all those things. But what they're trying to avoid is, hey, we sat a ton of money under and we can eat contracts throughout the course of the season. They want those teams spending that money up front. So that's what they're trying to push forward here and force a little bit. So what we're going to see happen in these situations is we're going to see these teams, spend in the offseason. The other thing is, just very briefly, if you're sitting way under by the time we get around to the end of the season, and where you didn't, and you're still like the Spurs were, you're not going to share in the luxury tax money that gets dispersed across the rest of the league. So there's really no benefit to being there, because what they want to avoid is teams that come in and operate of, hey, we'll just spend the minimum, we'll make a ton of money at the end of the year, more than what we have to pay out the players anyway, and off we go. So those are the things that are going to change and tweak and adjust, because it's not just about the most expensive teams. Those are the ones at the forefront that we're going to think the most about, but they're trying to bring all those other teams up as well, so that everybody's more on a much more level and even playing field.
Now on the champion Nuggets, we give credit to Calvin Booth for adding on the necessary complementary pieces around Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. They did acquire Aaron Gordon last year, big move. I thought, or 2 years ago, last year's offseason pickups of KCP and Bruce Brown certainly took them over the hump. But they've got a big decision to make with Bruce Brown now, because according to Bruce Brown, he didn't have many suitors in the offseason last year. He signed the 1+1 with Denver at $6 million per year, player option on the second year. They've got a big decision to make there with Bruce Brown. How do you think that plays out?
Yeah, normally what we're all thinking is this is just going to be Bruce Brown opts out, and then he's going to sign somewhere else, right? Because the Nuggets are so limited in what they can pay him. He made 6.8 million or so this year. The most they can offer him is 7.8 million going into next season. So what we're all kind of working under the assumption is, all right, well, he'll opt out. He'll go sign for, at a minimum, the non-taxpayer mid-level somewhere. That's going to be about 12.2 million in first year salary, if not even more, from one of these cap space teams that says, hey, we'll give him 15, 16 million and we'll roll forward. But then now we got to take some of the emotion, right, into account here. But right after the finals, he says, I want to stay, right? I want to stay in Denver. And there's definitely emotion involved there. But what we could see is a Bobby Portis type situation, which is what happened with the Bucks, which was opt out, re-sign for the minor bump in pay. Then a year later, the team will have early bird rights, and then they can really bump his salary up into a much more kind of reasonable range for the player he is. If he really is committed, I want to be in Denver, he could be back there for, like I said, 7.8 million, and they roll forward, and then, kind of wink, wink, we'll take care of you down the line sort of deal. Or he may say, yeah, in the end, I could get twice that in first year salary. I'm headed off to one of these cap space teams or something like that.
Now, Keith, with like one of those cap space teams that would double his salary, right? How would that impact them building a team wise? Because what has been discussed throughout the entire league is that you're going to have two guys on big contracts, and then it will be difficult to build out a well-rounded team. So for someone like Bruce Brown, who's thinking about that, does that mean he's going to a team like the Spurs then, who doesn't really have that much talent, and you're trying to compete there? Or does he still have to take less for money if he wants to compete on another team?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of options, right? Which is a good thing. He could go to the Spurs or the Magic or the Thunder, a team like, the Thunder, probably, they've got a million wings and guards. So, but, just throwing the cap space teams out there. He could even say, hey, Houston, if you're chasing James Harden, I'll come in and take what's left over, and I'll be, could come in and play a big role for you. So those are all options for him. Or any of the teams that are good, but not super expensive yet, that could use another wing. And let's be realistic, just about everybody could use a Bruce Brown type player because he can start, he can, obviously excel coming off the bench for you. So if you're a team like that, you could offer him your non-taxpayer mid-level at 12.2 in starting salary and say, hey, come in here, and you're going, and that's not quite double, but that's, a good chunk more money than what he could get from the Nuggets. So those are going to be the things he's weighing, right? Because the cap space teams they're not the good teams this year. Every once in a while we hit a summer, right, where there's, man, that team's really good and they have a ton of cap space. And generally that's because they had a bunch of young guys on value contracts pop. We're not really there. Probably the two teams that are kind of, the Rockets are in such a weird spot because they can do a ton of different things with roughly 60 million in cap space.
60 mil, yeah.
But the teams that are kind of, on the forefront of this are Orlando, Oklahoma City, and San Antonio. If you're a believer in Wembanyama is going to lift you right away, well, then San Antonio is a major player with, 30 plus million in space. If you're a believer in the Magic's young guys are going to get better and they just need a veteran or two, they become a player. Same thing with Oklahoma City. I love for Oklahoma City the idea of, you've got basically a pretty full roster, but you've got 30 million in space. So if we think back, remember when the Philadelphia 76ers were like, it's time to start winning games here. Yeah. And they went out and paid JJ Redick like $19 million. And everybody's like, what in the world? Right. $19 million. What are we doing? Well, it was because they signed him to a 1-year deal at the time. So it was, hey, you can pay a guy just about anything on a 1-year deal, and it's never really going to hurt you, right? Because it's a 1-year deal. So that's what I like a team. If the Thunder decide, you know what, hey, we like player X, let's go spend a ton of money on that player and let's move things forward. And really, we were a playing team. We could maybe make the playoffs next year. Let's go. Let's do that. They could do a move like that. So that's where, for a guy like Bruce Brown, he's got those options from those good teams, and he's got those options from those handful of cap space teams that look like they're ready to start moving things in a more forward direction as far as winning games.
Okay. Now moving along for a team like the Miami Heat, right? Where's their direction? Because right now the projected salary cap for them is 173. We know it's going to be 134 next season. What shape are they in to move forward and kind of retool this team?
Yeah, they're in a really weird spot because they have a ton of long-term big salary on their books. And it's not, I hesitate to call any of it really bad salary, right? Because Jimmy Butler's great. Bam Adebayo's great. You're fine with those two guys. Tyler Hero, a little more questionable, but in general, if he stays healthy, really good, solid scorer and shooter, fits in quite well with the way that he play. You're fine there. The only really bad big money on the books is Kyle Lowry, who he kind of looks like he's, outside of a couple games in the finals, looks like he's closer to done than he is being a nearly $30 million player, but that's only got 1 year left. But where it becomes a challenge for the Heat is then you have Duncan Robinson at like 18 million next season. Well, thank God for his rebirth for them in the playoffs, right? Because now that doesn't look so bad. Where it didn't look so great previous. So that was a challenge. And then you've got Victor Oladipo, who got hurt again. He's likely to pick up his player option for 9.5 million. So that's just a lot of money on your books. And I didn't even get to Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, two guys who started for the majority of the year and all the way through the playoff and finals run. They're both coming off minimum contracts. So, they both want paid. Right. So they're both going to want paid for the first time in their careers. And that's where everything gets really tricky for Miami, because if you pay both of them, let's just say, I don't know, $10 million a year for each of them. That's probably a little shy. Yeah. Let's just say that's where it landed. Now it's $20 million more on your books. You've now tripped into being what I call second tax apron, which is those super expensive teams. So I call it the super tax because I think that's more relatable than second luxury tax apron, which is like, I don't even understand what that means. Or do you getting real messy in the kitchen here? So you need two, what are we doing? So I like to call it the super tax. So when you hit that, now all of a sudden you're there as Miami. You've got a bunch of restrictions on how you're building out your team, and it just gets really, really complicated. So very, very difficult to navigate summer. But if there's anybody who can do it, and I trust you through it, it's that Miami front office, because they're one of the best in the league.
Okay. And then because we hear the rumors about Dame Lillard, right? And maybe Portland moving off of him, how would Miami be situated then with this cap situation to go get someone like Dame? And where's
Yeah,
it put
right
them
now.
afterwards? If
Sure,
they
yeah,
did do
right
a trade like
now.
that.
Right now they can go get him, right? Like the challenge is if you wait a year, it's going to be a lot harder because then you're sitting on all that stuff. What I say to everybody is, what do they send it back to Portland in a deal, right? And I say that with full recognition of superstar trades rarely deliver the massive monster haul that people think. Now, and it's unfortunate because now everybody's brains are almost poisoned because of the Mitchell and Gobert trades and everything those teams got, and even the KD trade. But historically, star trades have not given you back, here's four good players and, four draft picks and all that stuff. Generally, it's kind of one or the other, right? You get a bunch of picks and then all the players are kind of okay. Miami can trade some picks and they've got some okay players, but for the most part, you got to talk Portland into, hey, can you take Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson, right? Like, and then we'll plus it up with picks because it's not like they've got two or three younger guys that are just kind of sitting on their bench that, hey, these guys are pretty good and we can go. So that becomes a little bit of a challenge. You'd have to really be selling Portland on, hey, get out from under that contract. Maybe they could expand the deal and say, all right, you know what? We'll take back Yusuf Nurkic's contract. And then you're really now resetting around full youth and you're moving forward with very little long-term money on your books if you're Portland. And maybe that's a way you kind of plus it up. But the challenge is, meeting what's going to be, a major ask if Portland goes that way with Damian Lillard, that's going to be the tricky part for the Heat.
Absolutely, man. So to NBA Nation, at this moment in time, we are talking to Keith Smith, front office insider, man, covers the NBA for SpotRac as well as the front office podcast. Hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Call us up 657-383-1509 with any questions, or you can hit us up on the NBA Report Discord. Now, Keith, as we talk about Dame, there's a lot of talk about the number 3 pick, in the draft. What will Portland do with that number 3 pick? Now there's talk that the Pelicans want to move up to try to get maybe a Scoot Henderson. Maybe it's a Brandon Miller. Could Brandon Ingram be on the block? Could Zion be on the block? I mean, so many moving parts there. The NBA draft coming up in just about a week, June 22nd. What do you think David Griffin is thinking here in terms of, is he trying to rebuild now around the Scoot Henderson? Do they bail on the Zion experiment? Zion with the injury history can't stay on the court. What do you think Griffin is thinking there?
Yeah, and I'll start this by maybe dashing Pelicans fans' dreams. You're not getting up to 2 or 3, which is the rumored target spots for them, without trading Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson. You don't have the assets
no
to do
chance.
that with.
No chance.
Right. And I've seen people, well, what if they started trading the Milwaukee picks? Yeah, that's cool, but still not enough, right? Like, you're just not getting up that high in the draft. So really what that becomes is for New Orleans is, are we open to moving on from, some of these, high priced guys? And Ingram has, it's not like he, everybody screams about Zion and all the games missed. I think Ingram's been the picture of health either, right? He misses quite a few games himself. So my guess is if they want to go that way, I tend to think it's more Brandon Ingram in play than Zion Williamson for 2 reasons. One, Ingram's going to be, he's only got a couple years left on his deal. Zion is just starting his extension. And I got to believe the idea is, hey, if we're going up to get Scoot Henderson, boy, we like the idea over the next 5 years of pairing him with Zion. And now we've got 2 of the better young building blocks because Zion's still, still pretty young, right? And, in terms of stuff, it just feels like he's been through everything you could possibly be through already in his career. So I think you're really in a spot with him of, you're looking at it and you're still tantalized by it. Boy, when this guy does play, he is so good. He's so special, right? He's an all NBA level talent when he does play. Brandon Ingram is very, very good. He's just a notch below what Zion can be when he plays.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to move Zion, your idea there is, all right, we're just going to punt. We're going to say, forget it. We tried. We gave it our best shot. We don't think he'll ever be healthy. We're moving on and we're going in a different direction if that's your move. But, for it to come out as early as it did, that says to me they're pushing hard to try to get up into one of those picks, either 2 or 3. And what's funny is because it's also those reports came very clear, Scoot Henderson's the guy they want. that gives Charlotte power at 2, right? Because Charlotte can sit there and say, hey, cool, you can get up to Portland's pick, but we'll just take Scoot at 2 then. Right. And then now you trade it up to, I mean, not saying, New Orleans maybe doesn't still like Brandon Miller, but if your real target was Scoot, all right, now you're going to have to come up to us, right? You're going to have to move up to us. And that gives Charlotte some power there. So that, for guys like me and probably guys like you, that makes this a lot of fun, right? Because it's pretty rare that a top 5 pick is really in play via trade. It only happens about once every 4 or 5 years. So now we're in a spot where that could really be in play, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, interesting indeed. It's almost like, the leverage Charlotte had in the LaMelo draft. Where
a little bit, yeah.
Trying to come up for LaMelo, for Wiseman, and Jordan was sitting pretty. Gonna be fascinating to see how things move there.
I'll say too, sorry if I can real quick.
No, go ahead.
It happened a little bit later in the lottery, but remember when it was the Orlando Magic really wanted Elfrid Payton? Right, I know, old friend of your all's there, Elfrid Payton.
Oh my
but
God.
they really wanted him, and Philly said, cool, we're just going to take him, and then we're going to force you to draft the guy we want and trade us an extra first-round pick to go get him. Now, what's funny is that all got untied later when they ended up trading Markelle Fultz to Orlando too, and that whole thing got kind of wonky the way that all went ultimately as you chain it all together. But that's the kind of thing you're doing, right? If a team really has eyes, it's kind of like Danny Ainge when it was, hey, no, Philly really wants Fultz. The guy I want is Jason Tatum. And I know the Lakers aren't taking him at 2 because they're locked into taking Lonzo Ball. That's why I think the Hornets, we just got a report this morning of, hey, Scoot Henderson had a great workout with the Hornets. I think the Hornets are like, hey, don't lock us into Brandon Miller, right? We don't want to be fully locked in because we still want to put pressure on Portland. Hey, if you want Scoot, you got to get up here to get him. I'm sorry, New Orleans rather. If you want him, you got to come up to our pick to get him versus, hey, trade up to Portland's pick because Charlotte is definitely taking Brandon Miller. That's where I think some of that reporting comes out as well with that, as well as on my personal board, Scoot's my number 2 guy. I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be great, in the NBA. So I think that's factoring in as well. I think they're looking at it and saying, maybe we can make it work with Scoot Henderson and LaMelo Ball as our backcourt. We'll figure out all the rest later.
Once again, we are previewing the NBA offseason with Keith Smith. So to everybody in the chat, man, hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Share these videos, and let's get to the phones. Area code 850. What's your name? Where you call it in from? 850.
Yeah, this is Life Changes Land. How you doing today?
Good, man.
Alex, Mark.
Good, man. Oh, yeah, Mark's not here. We got Keith, but yeah, go ahead.
I knew.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm enjoying your show. Appreciate what you guys do. Long time listener, first time caller. Here in Tallahassee, Florida, and I've been a Knicks fan for quite a while. I used to live in New Jersey, but I just love what you guys are doing. I love the program. I love the NBA report that you've added to the show, and I just looking forward to more insight, more things that you guys are doing with the program. My question is, with the Knicks set up, and a lot of talk about trading Randle, which I don't agree with, but what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on a Randle trade?
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate the call, man. I think Alex and I have touched on this ad nauseum since the Knicks season has ended. But Mark, where do you feel like the Knicks should go? I mean, sorry, you got me saying Mark. Keith, where do you feel like the Knicks should go in terms of Julius Randle and their offseason this year?
Hey, at least you didn't call me Kevin. That happens all the time. I get Kevin and Smith, and I did not direct any Clerks movies, or I get
recording in progress,
or I get Keith Smart, and and I did not make a shot to beat Syracuse in the NCAA finals either. So, as much as I wish I had done either of those things, Randle, it's such a tricky spot, right? Because he's become such a key cog to what the Knicks have been kind of in this resurgence here over the last few years. He's been a tremendous regular season player, we've all seen some struggles in the postseason, right? We know, what they kind of go through there a little bit with that. And obviously last year's was heavily influenced, by an injury. My guess is they're probably going to keep him because I just don't see the trade that makes sense where it is like, this is the trade that makes you significantly better as a team than what you are right now, because it's very clear Randle fits quite well with what the Knicks have. Now, I'll acknowledge saying that having Jaylen Brunson as the engine now that can drive the team and arguably should be the full engine that drives the team, you're in a different spot than you were, a year or 2 years ago, right? Where you kind of really needed Randle because you didn't have another on-ball playmaker. Now you've got Brunson, so that should open things up. I think you guys know I'm a massive Obi Toppin guy. I think he's really good, and I think he can play. It's just never going to happen, in New York as long as Tibbs is there, because Randle's going to play 38 minutes a night, and that's going to leave, Toppin with like 10 minutes because for whatever reason, they've decided those two can never, ever, ever share the floor together. So that becomes a whole thing, right? So that is, if you're going to trade Randle, then you got to almost, in my opinion, unless you're getting another 4 back, you got to lock into, then we're going to re-sign Toppin to a rookie scale extension because we need to have something locked in at that position. And then what is Randle coming in? Is it a wing? Is it a bigger wing to come in and replace? I think the better move for the Knicks is, I think it's time. I know we still get that, some outstanding stuff coming in picks wise for them. But, I think it's time for them to maybe turn and say, all right, let's package together some of these other salaries, especially the salaries for guys who don't necessarily play a huge role, which is always a good thing to have in a trade, right? Because then you're not weakening your rotation. But let's start moving some of those guys with some of the draft picks and maybe a Toppin, in a trade. And now let's go fill in, a rotation hole that way where we can get in maybe the wing that way. I don't know that the Randle trade is the way I would go about doing that.
And so, Keith, for like the Knicks, are you talking about a trade for like someone like Joel Embiid? Or are you talking for like around the edge type player?
Yeah, I mean, if you get Embiid, see you later, Julius Randle. I'll pack your place and drive you to the airport, right? I mean, that's that's Joel Embiid. That's the MVP of the league. So right. I'm thinking lower down, right? Think slightly further down, in the pecking order of potential available players. And that's hard at this time of year because we don't really know, who those guys may be. And like obviously the Pelicans would not do it because it doesn't do anything for them. But if a Brandon Ingram level guy became available, I'd be all over that. If I was the Knicks in one of those deals absolutely. Where I packaged together a bunch of stuff and draft picks. To go get him. I don't know that, I'm doing that if it's, hey, I'm definitely going to, trade, Julius Randle and other stuff to get a guy like that. I don't know that makes me enough better. I don't know that resets things because Ingram can play the 4, but he's not really a 4 right now. Now we get a team that's, our centers, our point guards, and a whole bunch of dudes that are wings that are kind of masquerading at, various other positions. So that's where you just got to find that roster balance, for them. But I think they're in a good spot where they're set up with a lot of assets that can be traded by plussing up with, hey, we're going to add draft picks into the mix here. And I think we're getting close to it's not full all-in time, unless that right true superstar like Joel Embiid became available, then go all in and go get him. But I think we're more in a position of, hey, it's time to start really putting things together to try to take the next step from being a good team and a fun regular season team to a team that can contend in the East.
Okay, so someone like Brandon Ingram, would you put Paul George in that type of
area
area too?
Probably. Okay. Yeah, but not see that one. That's another one where would I rather have Paul George and Julius Randle on its face? Yeah, probably. But my thing is I look at that is where, again, am I getting that much better? Because it would have to be Julius Randle plus, right, to go get Paul George. And that's where that becomes, more of your challenge part there is, did I get enough better? Because again, I added a wing, I subtracted a 4, unless you really feel like, all right, we trade Randle for a guy like Paul George, and then we drop, Obi Toppin in there as our starting 4, and we move it forward that way. Well, if you feel pretty good about that, then I could definitely be convinced. It's always that tricky part. Like I think about, a year ago when everything was Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant for the Celtics, And it was, my thing was, yeah, if it was Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant straight up, you do that every single day. The problem was when it became Jaylen Brown plus, that's where it becomes, all right, now are we getting enough better that all the other stuff we had to put in puts us where we want to be? And that becomes a little bit of the question.
Okay. And then unless CP, you got a question?
Yeah, well, no, I was going to say, you talked about Toppin and potential rookie extension with Randle being here. I think they keep him and potentially put Obi on the block. There was talks of them with the Pacers back at the trade deadline. Now it looks like the Pacers are in line for one of these top power forwards in the draft, so not so sure if they continue their pursuit of Obi Toppin there. But what about Emmanuel Quickley? He's extension eligible as well. Finished second in the Sixth Man of the Year runnings in last year. What do you think about Quickley and his extension possibilities with the Knicks?
Yeah, over at SpotRac, I wrote the rookie scale extension prediction piece, and I said I would give Quickley 4 years, 80+ million with incentives to push it up around 90 without a question. I just get it done. And it's funny because from Knicks fans, it was like, yeah, let's go, right? I'm good. But then there were a handful. It's like, man, 20+ million a year for this guy who comes off the bench. Well, 20 million is not going to be all that much over the mid-level exception in a few years. So that's where you got to just reframe your thinking, right? I keep saying 20 million.
Not the same 20 million.
Correct.
Not
20
at
million
all.
is the old 12 million, right? Like it's, that's, where it is. So I think what you start doing with a guy like Emmanuel Quickley is you can get him locked up on it, what I think would be a very reasonable deal. That's great because what he's shown is he's great coming off the bench, right? He can play alongside Jaylen Brunson when need be, because that's the big thing in the guard spot. You got to be able to play with Brunson. If you can't play with Brunson, then you have no place on this team. He can also start when he needs to, right? And play well and hold down the starting role. I know he drops off slightly, as a starter, but that's, not the end of the world, right? I'm not going to worry too much about that. And I think, if you can lock him up, now we got Brunson, Grimes, and Quickley locked in for at least the next 3 seasons. I feel good about my backcourt rotation. I can turn my eyes to other stuff on the roster.
Back to the phones we go. Area code 203. What's your name? Where you calling in from? Oh, this guy's on a high-speed chase. You all right, man?
Hello?
Yeah, hello. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
It's Adrian from Connecticut.
All right, man. Rapid fire. Let's go.
All right, rapid fire. I want to, first of all, quick shout out. Love what y'all do.
So,
you know what I'm saying? Everyone move over to the NBA Report, from
Absolutely.
Knicks Fan TV. So it's my first time on the NBA Report. So this was up. I appreciate it. Take my call. But I know everybody's talking about the second apron. Everybody's talking about how everybody is going to have 2 people, like 2 big names, and then the roster is probably not going to be it's probably going to be more top heavy, or you're going to have more vets and pieces. So my question is, we have Brunson on a beautiful deal, descending contract for 2 more years. Randle's number is not as crazy like Boston's numbers are with Tatum and Brown. So everybody's talking about potentially trading for a star. Do we think that may be a thing that if we miss this window now, are we going to be kind of like, are we willing to give Jaylen Brunson, which I think every Knicks fan would be willing to give him the money he deserves, but how much would that potentially handicap us moving forward if people like Randle and
RJ.
Barrett are still on the books?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. We got it. I just want to move it forward because we kind of pressed for time. So basically saying if they don't strike now or maybe within next year, that by the time they max out Brunson, you still have Barrett and Randle on the team, does it handcuff them from truly improving the team?
Yeah, that's tough, right? Because you're in a spot with those guys where you have to be planning for the long term, but you never want to plan for the long term by completely sacrificing the short term when you're in a spot where the Knicks are, right? It's not like they are barely hanging in the playoff race as a play-in team. They comfortably made the playoffs. They won their first round series. So you really start looking at this as I'm not punting any of my stuff right now because I got to worry about what it might look like 2 years from now when Jaylen Brunson's up for a new contract. I think I'm more, concerned with let's take advantage of where we're at right now, where, if we can go get a star now, and it's got to be a star that fits. Let's go make it happen because we have, Jaylen Brunson. It's funny because, a year ago, everything was Damian Lillard, Damian Lillard, Damian Lillard. Now we don't really hear that related to the Knicks anymore because of Jaylen Brunson, right? Because those two guys, I don't care, how good you are, you're probably not going to be a very good defensive team with those two as your starting backcourt, right? You'd have to have all defense guys 3 through 5. So I think what really becomes in that situation is, all right, let's try to, take advantage of this. And what you could see is, if you're looking at it and saying, all right, RJ Barrett, some other team loves him and thinks, he can be the guy, and they have like a veteran wing, like you kind of threw out a Paul George or something like that. If the Clippers were looking to reset their salary situation a little bit, maybe you look at moving RJ Barrett in that kind of spot. Cause again, he fits in with Brunson and would fit fine with that kind of player. But though that's going to be your focus moving forward. Not necessarily about, well, we'll go to the whole 2 stars and whatever stuff. We'll see, right? I mean, some teams are still going to build that way. Other teams are going to build with, hey, we're going to balance things out a little bit more, kind of how the Knicks have, right? With a bunch of dudes who make, 15, 25, 30 million. Like, and that's fine, right? The great thing about the NBA is we just saw the Nuggets prove there's no perfect right way to build a team, right? Everything is build your team out the way you think is best and go, and other, and then we'll see probably within the next couple of years, one of these teams that's built around 2 superstar players and a bunch of depth pieces, they'll probably emerge and push forward too. It's just the only thing I'll say on that is if you're going the 2-star route, you better be confident that your 2 stars are going to be there every game all the way through June, because if they're not, now you're in trouble. You turn into what the Lakers were for last year, most of this season, which was, hey, without our guys, we didn't have enough depth to get by. And lo and behold, when it finally turned around for them is when they went and traded for a real functional roster, right? Yeah. Then they were able to move it forward.
Yeah, I think, you're right on that, on the 2 stars, and in that there's no, sure way to build a team. But I also think what we've seen, if you look at the Nuggets this year, you look at the Warriors dynasty, and you look at the Bucks when they won, it started with a legendary talent that you drafted in-house, right?
Yep.
Jokic and Murray, Giannis, Steph, Clay, Draymond, like the infrastructure. Even go back to your Celtics, right? The original, when that big 3 term started, it was Paul Pierce. And they had an upstart point guard drafted in Rajon Rondo. They were able to take a talented Al Jefferson, turn that into Kevin Garnett. Then they were able to get, so it's almost still seems to me is that you need that surefire draft pick that you can keep in-house and then go get the rest. With the Knicks, to me, it's RJ Barrett still has to show that he can be that guy and be a cut above the rest, above Quickley, above Grimes, above so on and so forth. Then you can maybe part with the rest of those guys and still have your core of, RJ Brunson, and then go get another star. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm completely with you, right? Your hope as a Knicks fan and as a Knicks organization was that RJ was going to be that guy, right? That by now he'd be a, definite all-star level guy, maybe even pushing all NBA and, into that kind of star tier. And he just hasn't been that yet, right? It's been, I think I'm still higher on him than a lot of other people are. But there's still, good player, certainly a very good player. I don't think the contract's by any means a bad contract. I know some people screamed and yelled, but with where we're going, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, they don't have that kind of super duper star on the roster right now. And I love Jaylen Brunson. I think, all-star level guy, all NBA level guy, maybe, this year was a little weird on the guard line. So that's just a hard group to crack in general, but with the whole new rules around, you got to play 65 games and get there, it may become a little easier for a guy like him who doesn't tend to miss a lot of time to pop in there and get to that level. Julius Randle's been an all NBA level guy. So yeah, you've got kind of the nice pieces, but yeah, you're right. You don't have the super duper star that's kind of anchoring where it's everything gets built around that guy. Because as much as I've sat here and said, you got to get pieces that fit with Brunson, I'm not making every single decision around Jaylen Brunson, right? Like he's not that guy, right? Like he's very, very good, but that's, and I want pieces who fit with him, especially over the next couple of years, but I'm not like locked in. Here's my franchise guy for the next, half decade or more. I don't know that we're at that level, with him, but yeah, I mean, they're despite that, still in a pretty good spot, right? Where there's still some stuff to still be figured out for sure, but they're not in a bad place, and they have the ability to maybe go get that guy if that guy becomes available, as we see happen all so often.
Well, you know what team?
Yeah, get up.
I was gonna say, I know a team that doesn't have a super duper star and doesn't have a really good situation, and that is the Washington Wizards. And so, Keith, you actually tweeted this stuff out earlier today, where it was you had was it something you tweeted this out? Something that's picking up more buzz is Kristaps Porzingis opting in for his $36 million with Washington next season. Under the old front office, the assumption was Porzingis would opt out and re-sign a long-term deal with the Wizards. He may take the money now and hit free agency in 2024. You then follow that up with, no matter what happens with Porzingis and Kyle Kuzma, who will definitely opt out, Wizards seem primed for a full rebuild. The team is expected to also consider Bradley Beal trades. That will necessitate working with Beal as he holds NBA's only negotiated no trade clause. So with all of that said, what is the outlook for the Wizards this upcoming offseason? Because their books is not necessarily great, especially with someone like Bradley Beal making $50 million a year. He's not that guy either that's could show that could be either fully available for you and could take it to the playoffs all by himself that we've seen other players do. So what's the move for Washington moving forward?
Yeah, so if this was still the old Wizards front office, Porzingis was going to opt out. They were going to re-sign him to, a 4 or 5 year deal and keep it moving. They probably would have paid Kuzma a whole bunch of money and, said, all right, let's go. We still got Porzingis, Kuzma, and Beal, and if we're healthy, we'll compete for a playoff spot. The new front office has been very open almost at every turn, whether it's in, exclusive interviews or, in press conferences of, hey, we have been given the go-ahead to fully rebuild if that's the direction we feel we need to go. And that's very different, right? They've been for years now, a couple of decades of let's just be good enough to be a playoff team, right? That's where our comfort level lies. And there's a handful of franchises that go that direction in the league. So now with the new front office, it's no longer a lock that those things are going to happen, right? I think Kuzma's gone. He's definitely opting out because $13 million is way undervalued for him. And I don't think the Wizards are going to say, all right, we'll pay you $25 million a year. I think it's very likely he's going to find that from another team because all of these cap space teams, one thing that they almost all have in common, they can all use a combo forward who can score. Right. So as you look at those teams, he could definitely go get a ton of money from one of those teams. Porzingis is in a weird spot because it sounds weird to say he'll opt in to be part of a full rebuild. But I think what he's going to do is say, oh, shoot, a $30 million plus a year deal, probably not sitting there for me if I opt out from Washington, and probably not out there from another team. If he opts out now, I think it's because, let's be grown-ups here and be reasonable. Guys have a sense of what's available to them well ahead of free agency starting, right? Yeah. So if he knows, all right, I've got a pretty good deal sitting there, then maybe he opts out and he knows, hey, T-Max is going to sign me to a whole bunch of money and we're going to move forward with them. Otherwise, I think what's now picking up the buzz, and I'm hearing more and more, is he opts in with the idea of, hey, whether they trade me or not, whatever they want to do, that's on them. Then I'll hit free agency a year from now, and we'll figure it out in the summer of 2024 when there'll be teams with cap space. There'll be teams that are looking for stuff. He's coming off, in my opinion, the best season he's ever had in the NBA. He stayed mostly healthy, and he was dominant at times for them. It got missed because the team stunk. Then you go down to Beal. The only problem with trading Bradley Beal is he does have that no trade clause. So he can block a trade to anybody. So if they're up and like, hey, you know what? We're going to trade you to Charlotte because they really think it's there. He could say, nah, I'm good. I don't want to go. Nope, not happening. And then it becomes, all right, well, what about this team? What about that team? And until it's where he wants to go, he can block any of those trades. And that was probably overkill. Well, not probably. It was overkill giving him that no trade clause when they re-signed him on top of a full max deal, on top of a player option, on top of a trade bonus, all the things they gave him. They should not have given him the no trade clause too in free agency a year ago. but they did, and now they've got to live with it and figure it out. So that'll mean working with him to find a trade if that's the direction they choose to go.
See, to me, like Beal, Levine, Cat, those teams all felt like desperate to keep their talent in-house because they didn't have any other decisions. And now when you look at all three of those teams, it's like, I have no idea what's next for either one of them, but it's not going to be good for them in the end because whether it's moving Beal, which is going to be difficult, moving Levine is going to be difficult. Same thing with Cat. I think those teams are looking at a rebuild at some point within their future and not really competing for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think as you look at the Wolves and Bulls situations, at least you can feel a little bit better if those guys are a little younger and a team might pitch themselves on, hey, full change of scenery. Like, let's go forward with these guys. But Cat's missed a lot of time over the last few years, so that's going to factor in. Levine's got this knee thing, which doesn't ever seem to fully go away. So that's going to be something that factors in for sure. With Beal, you've got age concerns. He's it's so weird the way his career has gone, right? Because when he started, he was a guy who was like, this dude's never going to get healthy. So he's never going to become what we want him to be. Then he got healthy, became a really good player, got overpaid because of it, and now he's back to missing time again. So that becomes a little bit more of a challenge of, all right, where do we go? But one thing we know is when there's guys who can score 25 plus points per game, there's always going to be some team that's going to say, yeah, with us, it'll be okay, right? We're the team, we'll figure it out. So they'll find a trade for these guys one way or another if they have to.
Once again, we're talking to front office insider Keith Smith. So to everybody in the chat, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Keith, the Lakers made a surprising run all the way to the Western Conference Finals. This was a team that was at one point the 13th seed in the West. Made some trades, got out from underneath the knots of that Westbrook trade and turned something into it. Got a surprise, and Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves emerged as well. But now they're looking at two aging stars, two injury-prone stars, as you factor in LeBron James's age and now his injury history, missing a ton of games. What do you think happens with the Lakers this offseason? Obviously, Kyrie is the talk, but what do you think they go with things in the offseason?
Yeah, it's that last part next last part that you kind of hit on there with the injuries for the two stars and their age. What do we think? Those guys top out at 60 games each, next year probably. And that's probably not in the grand scheme of things the worst thing in the world, right? As long as they're healthy by the time April rolls around and the playoffs are starting, that's all that really matters. But because of that, I think they're done with the idea of, hey, let's rip this whole thing apart. We'll have LeBron, AD, and superstar 3, right? And that's, most often recently been mentioned to be Kyrie Irving. A couple reasons for that. One is getting to Kyrie Irving's salary number. That's really hard, right? Even because LeBron and AD make roughly $100 million between the two of them, you're at a spot where it's, you're not like sitting on 50 million in cap space, right? You're down probably in the 30-ish million range. Now, if there's any star level, max level guy in the NBA that you could convince me says, I'll take 3/4 of what I could have got. All right, I'll believe you that it's Kyrie Irving, right? I tend to believe him when he says it's not about the money, because it seemingly every year all he does is things that cost him a whole bunch of money. So I think it's, you could convince me, but I don't think that's going to be how it goes, right? I don't think he's going to say, hey, what's probably my last, major contract, just because of his age and injury history too. I don't think he's going to sacrifice, $47 million in starting salary. So I think the Lakers are going to more or less run it back. Re-sign Hachimura, re-sign Reeves, probably re-sign D'Angelo Russell. Here's the key. Reeves and Hachimura are going to be slightly different situations because they're restricted free agents. You only control so much of the process. But with a guy like D'Angelo Russell or guys like Dennis Schroeder, those kind of more role player type guys, just don't give them 4-year deals. Lock into 1 or 2 year deals. Kind of tie them to when LeBron could be gone, when AD could potentially be gone. Try to keep yourself as flexible as you can for the years moving forward, because we know when the Lakers have a ton of cap space, they're always going to be a player because they're the Lakers. It's Los Angeles. They'll be fine. What you can't do is just lock into 25, 30 million for a whole bunch of guys. Then a year from now, LeBron opts out and is off to play wherever Bronny's playing, and now it's like, man, now we're stuck with this LeBron built roster, not built by LeBron, but built to maximize LeBron. And and he's not here right now. Now we're stuck with a bunch of these guys for the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 seasons. And that's where you can't be. So I think, just be sensible with what you sign those guys to. And the good news for them is a bunch of their free agents, other than Reeves, maybe Hachimura. It's not like teams are going to be day one phone calls to those guys saying, hey, we're sitting here with a $35-40 million first year salary deal for those guys. That's not going to be there. They're going to have to pay to keep Reeves and Hachimura, but we'll figure that all out when we get there, in that situation.
And we know how teams that have built around LeBron look afterwards. We've seen that with the Cavs. We've seen that with Miami. So it's not good if you think about going in all that way. But hey, I hope the Lakers do, man. As an avid Lake, no, I'm just playing.
Hey, you're talking to a kid who grew up in Boston. You're not going to upset me at all with Lakers slander, much to the chagrin of my front office co-host Trevor Lane, who's the biggest Lakers guy in the world that I know.
Well, this is the NBA report, so I'm going to try to stay as neutral as much as possible. But
there you go.
Key, you did mention your team, Boston Celtics. I got to ask you this: Jaylen Brown, are the Celtics going to extend him? Are they going to give him that max money, or are we going to see him on, packing his bags and potentially going to Atlanta or somewhere else?
All right. So here's my take with Jaylen Brown. I think the Celtics offer him the full supermax deal that they can offer him. The full 35% of the cap, almost $300 million contract. I think they offer that to him just because you let tomorrow's problems be tomorrow's problems when you have guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? If, a lot of teams would say, yeah, what a terrible thing to have to figure out how to build a roster around those two guys, right? So I think you let that be down the line. Now, my caveat to that is you offer him that at, midnight on July 1st when you're able to. If he turns around and says, nah, I'm good, I don't want to sign that, that's red flags, warning sirens, everything should go off of, all right, we got to trade him. Because he cannot make more money. He can't, earn more money with Boston. It can't happen because what happens is he's under contract for next season, no matter what. The Celtics can offer him the supermax, but it kicks in at 24-25, and it's locked into 35% of whatever the cap is. So if it's $290 million, if it goes up and it ends up being $300+ million total, he'll get that. That's how that type of contract works. So now what he does run the risk of, he doesn't make All NBA next year, then he's not even eligible for it. And that becomes a whole other issue if he doesn't sign it. And he clearly, as I think everybody knows, you can't get as much money by leaving a team in free agency. So offer it to him, let it be his decision. If he turns it down, then you open up the trade, offer window, and it'll be, you'll be able to get some kind of massive return package from a team that's like, hey, we're going to go all in around Jaylen Brown being our guy, and we go. So that's how I think that one plays out.
Heath, Phoenix has some building to do. They went all in for KD, got rid of a budding star in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, a good player, some draft picks that the Nets were able to recover. But now they're sitting there with not a lot of depth, an aging CP3 who they need to make a decision on by the end of this month. Are they going to waive him? Are they going to stretch? Are they going to try to trade? Well, what do you see the Suns offseason looking like in order to get them to a realistic shot at toppling the Nuggets for the West?
Got to rebuild your depth, right? This is kind of goes back to what we talked about. They're now super duper top heavy, right? And you've got Kevin Durant, again, probably another one of those guys. If you get 60 regular season games out of him, you're feeling pretty good, right? Devin Booker, he hasn't always been the most healthy guy in the league either. So you're probably thinking, all right, we're going to miss some time between those two guys. Whether DeAndre Ayton is there or not, or do you break DeAndre Ayton's contract up into 2 or 3 players, and get moving in the direction that way. You mentioned the Chris Paul situation. That's, we're going to see, my gut tells me, and putting together all the reporting that's out there, he's probably not going to be a Sun next year. Now, whether that's because they traded him and they rebuilt some depth, but it's got to be all about building their depth up. By the time they get to the playoffs last year, it felt like they had about 5 NBA players that they could run with, right? And that's not going to win, right? Especially against a team like Denver that was, running out their 8-man rotation and feeling good about whoever it was that they had on the floor at all times. And, a lot of the other teams they're looking at, I know things went sideways on the Grizzlies, but, they've got a good deep rotation. They're going to be good. The Warriors will be good. Clippers, who the heck knows, right? We think they'll probably be good, but we're not sure, so if they're not healthy and ready to run with, 7-8 guys at a minimum by the time we get to the playoff, the Suns are going to have trouble because there's only so far the greatness of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker can take you. You've got to have depth around those guys. So that's going to be the order business this summer, and it's probably going to cost them Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton as they break those guys up into multiple players. But in the end, that's probably the direction that's best served for them to go.
Yeah,
and
with that.
And with the Suns right now, it's because they're over the cap. They're, as you mentioned, top heavy. What is that course? If you waive Chris Paul, like I would guess that Chris Paul, if he's going to take less money, right, he'd want to go to a team that's a little bit more complete. That's why I think the Lakers and the Clippers are usually rumored. So then what's the course for Phoenix? Are we just going to see a lot of middling, if not low end role players playing with next to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant?
Yeah, I mean, what you do is if you go the path of waiving Chris Paul, you're gonna waive him, you're gonna waive and stretch him, you're gonna open up the full non-taxpayer MLE. That's $12 million. That gets you somebody. You still probably, with Paul or without Paul, you're working on Ayton offers and look and see what it looks like, right? Because if you could break him up into 2 or 3 starting level guys or at least rotation guys, you probably do that in the end. So now you're really looking at, all right, well, we've got Booker and Durant. We've got Landry Shamet still here. We've got Campaign still here. Now we've got to go get ourselves some front court depth. They've done well on minimum signings. Guys like Bismack Biyombo and Jock Landale were in general fine, right? Because you're basically saying play defense and rebound, right? There's not a lot of shots to go your way anyway. And then you're looking at, all right, we got to build up our wing depth behind Durant and Booker. So $12 million probably goes towards that. You're probably looking at, or can we get a point guard in here, a veteran point guard who wants to win? There's always going to be somebody available, in free agency. Do they say, well, we can run with Campaign as a starter as long as we put in a better, better level of backup behind him that we feel pretty good about with that. So those are the things you're looking at, going. But yeah, I mean, it's not like just waiving Chris Paul opens up $30 million in cap space. I think people get super excited about that. That's not how it works. You're still, going to be an over the cap team, and you're still limited in how you build that roster out.
This is the NBA report. So to everybody in the chat, once again, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. We have front office insider Keith Smith with us. Mark Jones of ESPN on the way. Hit that like button, hit that share button, and subscribe to the channel. We are previewing what could be a wild NBA offseason. Mark, Keith, shout out to Chris Cruz in the chat. There's a lot of talk about what direction the Hawks go in. Quinn Snyder coming in half the year with Nate McMillan going out. Trae Young, coming under fire, his leadership. Will he be moved? Does he get kept? What about Dejounte Murray? Because contractually, there's discussions about whether or not they can afford to keep a Dejounte Murray. Has he priced himself out of Atlanta? What do you think happens there?
Yeah, the Hawks have $500 million in guaranteed salary on their books. And that was billion with a B, not to go all Dr. Evil on everybody, but that's billion with a B. So, $500 million in guaranteed salary for a team that is pretty average, right? Like they're not terrible, but they're not great either, right? So what the challenge really comes in for the Hawks is you got to rebalance, right? You got to start doing some stuff because guys like Onyeka Okongwu due for an extension. You mentioned Dejounte Murray due for a new contract. He's not going to extend because even with the improved extension rules for veterans, it's still not enough to get him where he needs to be money-wise. So that turns into Dejounte Murray's in a spot where, all right, he's probably coming into free agency a year from now. So you got to start, looking at rebalancing. My guess is maybe this is finally the summer John Collins gets traded and they go in a different direction, right? I mean, dude's been on the trade block since, probably
like 2.5 years.
Been
on the trade block since he got drafted.
Yeah, it feels that way, right? And then what's sad is he's a good player, right? He can really play. He's one of the better rebounders in the league. And I pulled this when I wrote their offseason preview over on SpotRac. Under Quinn Snyder, right, which was supposed to be all right, well, we're going to really get a sense of where this team goes. And I'm not going to go too crazy because it was only a handful of games under Snyder. It wasn't even a full half a season's worth. But he only took 9.5 shots per game. And it's not like that's actually slightly less than he got, under Nate McMillan. So it's very clear they've turned him into the third, fourth, sometimes even fifth guy on the floor, depending on who else is on the floor with him. They probably should not have signed DeAndre Hunter to the extension they signed him to. They probably overpaid there. So that turns into these situations where you got to get this figured out, right? So you've got too many guys. And then on top of it, right at the end of the season, out of nowhere, hey, we're going to also extend Bogdanovic, and add a few more years onto his deal too, after extending Clint Capella. So a lot of overlap on that roster, a lot of guys signed. There's got to be something's going to give where you start trading some of the long-term money out for shorter term money. There try to get that into a position where we reset a little bit, right? And we go into a spot where it's, all right, we're resetting. We opened up the ability to extend Onyeka Okongwu because he's not now blocked or sharing the position with Clint Capella. Now we can re-sign Dejounte Murray. And then what you do is you give probably one more year, and then you start having real serious conversations of, all right, is our best way out of this? Trade Trae Young and reset around the guys who are left and the guys we get for him. That probably becomes more of a question if they're not there. But I mean, Trae Young tweeted after the Nuggets, 2024 is our year. So
we're next.
I don't know. I guess that's it. We're next or whatever it was he said.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go to the phone. See if we get one more in here. 917. What's your name? Where you calling in from?
Gentlemen.
Yes. Tom from Huntington in the building.
Tom from Huntington. How are you, sir?
Absolutely. Happy Wednesday, sir. How are you, sir?
Thank you. And God bless you and your family.
Absolutely.
I just want to say excellent show as always. Shout out to you, the panel, the chat, everyone else involved. Love it. Really quick, because me, rapid fire thing real quick.
Yep.
Whoever pushed for Elfrid Payton with the Magic, they're probably in Shanghai now. Or with the management team with the Timberwolves. They've got to be there. That's the fact. Really quick question I have for Keith. Nothing, I'll keep it moving.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know it's a long shot. Everyone always shakes their head or gives that crooked smile. Anyway, the Knicks could maybe overpay for Mikal Bridges. I know it's a long shot. I know the Nets hate the Knicks and despise them. Is there any way that they could overpay for him? I'll keep it moving. Shout out to Manscaped and Oakley. You guys keep doing the work you do, and we'll talk soon.
Tom from Huntington, appreciate it, man. I don't see the Knicks and Nets talking any trades, man.
Yeah, it would have to be, in my opinion, such a severe overpay.
Yeah.
Because one, Mikal Bridges is really good, and he's on a really good contract.
Right.
That's the exact kind of guys the Nets are rebuilding this roster. That's the exact guy you want to be building around. So you'd have to give so much to get him that I just can't see it. It doesn't seem like anything that would be in play for me. And just to tag the guy who pushed for that, he's back working for the Thunder again as kind of their assistant GM. That was a Rob Hennigan push to get Elfrid Payton. But it was one of those things where they looked at it as we needed a point guard to push things over the top. In Orlando is what they felt like, and they tried to make their run at it, and it ended up not working out the way they wanted it to.
Yeah. Naz Reid is another guy that a lot of fans like. Rugged center, can stretch the floor a little bit. Only made $1.6 million this year. Could he potentially be a cap casualty with the Timberwolves in terms of, they owe Towns and Gobert $90 million. They got to pay Ant Edwards. They got to pay McDaniels.
Yep.
What about Naz Reid? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a chance he gets priced out because of those other things you said. You've got Towns and Gobert on max deals. Edwards is going to be on a max deal. McDaniels is going to make minimum $25 million a year with where everything's headed for what he is as a player. So now all of a sudden this goes back to that. We've got our 2 or 3 guys. How do we build out the rest? Well, it's probably going to cost you a guy like Naz Reid, unless that team is really willing to say, well, let's go deep into the super tax and we'll figure it all out down the line. My guess is he gets priced out and ends up with some team that's willing to give him probably chunk of, if not the full non-taxpayer MLE, that $12 million starting salary. Maybe he goes there. They get that all played out and off they go.
Absolutely, man. Well, Keith, great job. We got the draft coming up on the 22nd. We have free agency kicking off on the 30th. Hopefully you come back and join us when it's all said and done, and we'll recap and give out some off-season grades, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Absolutely. And just let the people know where they can find you, anything you're working on, and where they can find that as well.
Yeah, you can find my written work over at SpotRac NBA. We've got all sorts of off-season stuff going. I mentioned the rookie scale prediction piece. That's already up. We've got team previews that are going up. I think we've got 8 or 9 of them left. We go in order of elimination. So we're down to the teams that went the deepest into the playoffs. So those will all be posted, here within the next week or so ahead of the draft. All those will be finished up. There's going to be a piece that posts later today where I went through all of the player and team options and made a prediction on what happens, whether they get picked up or declined. With those, we'll have another one of those for non-guarantees. We'll have a lot of fallout coming from the draft and cap space and all that. It's the place to find all your stuff. And then NBA front office show, if you like this kind of league-wide look, but you want to get a little bit deeper into the numbers, a little bit nerdy with us, check Trevor Lane and I out there, NBA front office show, podcast, YouTube, whatever you want to do. You find us on both of those. Listen in, and we have a lot of shows, and we go live for the draft. We're going to do a live draft show, probably the full first round and into the second round as well.
Nice.
So we'll be with you live, several hours reacting to the draft picks and trades and everything that's going on around the NBA draft.
All right, man. Keith, thanks again. So to everybody in the chat, Keith Smith, ladies and gentlemen, great segment previewing the NBA offseason ahead, man. It could be a wild one, man. So we'll see what happens. A lot of teams trying to maneuver and get right before this new salary cap kicks in. The second apron looks like a poison pill in its own right. What will Golden State do? How will the Clippers manage? And then you look at other teams that are trying to get to where the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat finish this year, and that is in the conference finals, and hopefully winning a championship. What will the Knicks do to get there? Is there a big trade on the horizon? Do they bring Quickley back? Do they re-sign Toppin? Is a Bradley Beal blockbuster trade in the works? We'll have to see, man. We'll have to see, but we definitely thank Keith for staying with us and delivering the goods, man. Absolutely. So we're waiting to bring in the great Mark Jones. Daniel, just let me know when we're ready to go. Salute to everybody in the chat. Who we got in the chat here, man? I see a lot of mods. Salute to Got You Open. Nick Reyes in the building here. Barbara Carroll. Salute to Gamba. Yep, we got more. Stick around. We got the great Mark Jones. We're just setting up his cameras and getting him ready to go, man. Looking forward to it. And this one was one that a bucket list conversation, man, an absolute bucket list conversation. So Daniel, when you're ready to pull him in, let's get him in here. And there he is, reporting live from. Is that the 305?
Miami-Dade County, 305.
Reporting live from the 305, man. 30 plus years in the business. Covering a multitude of sports, college football, a number of NBA shows for ESPN, the play-by-play man for the Sacramento Kings. They lit the beam and had a great season in their own rights. A man of many bars, ladies and gentlemen. We got the greats. Mark Jones in the building. Mark, CP the franchise, Alex Fataros, the NBA Report. Thanks for joining us, man.
Man, I'm honored to be on the podcast, and you guys do fantastic work, man. I've been checking you guys out for a minute now. And anytime we can chop it up about basketball, it's a good day. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. We appreciate the time. And look, we just wrapped up the NBA Finals in which the Denver Nuggets toppled the Heat in 5 games. But what did you think about the finals and with the Nuggets coming away victorious?
I thought the better team won. I really do. I think Denver from, probably a third of the way into the NBA season was arguably the most consistent team in the NBA outside of Milwaukee, who ultimately ended up with the best record in the NBA. But they just really kind of followed their process. And I think the thing that my indelible image coming away from the NBA Finals this year is just what a great fit Denver is. Their role definition is so precise, their hierarchy is so outlined. It's Joker Murray, their 2-man dance. It's Aaron Gordon in the dunker spot, defensively guarding the other team's best player. It's KCP catch and shoot threes and outstanding impenetrable defense on the perimeter. It's Bruce Brown off the bench. Just their role definition. they fit really well. You know, when you look at the way they play, their depth, you know, going back a couple of years, Tim Connolly, their former VP of personnel and general manager, and Calvin Booth, the general manager, did a fantastic job of putting that roster together. You know, and when everyone was talking about the Lakers and Memphis and Golden State, Denver they handled their business, and I thought the best team won.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. To me, the most complete team, building around their 2 drafted stars, Jokic, obviously back-to-back MVP, Jamal Murray, and then give credit to Calvin Booth. I thought the Bruce Brown pickup was big. I couldn't understand how the Nets let a glue guy, a 2-way glue guy, let them go. But for me, I thought he was the guy that was going to help this Denver defense play at a championship level, along with Aaron Gordon and KCP as well, a nice 3-and-D wing defender. On the Jokic side of things, you know, 30 points per game in this finals, 14 boards, 7 assists. Where do you put Jokic's playoff run, finals run? How do you stack that up against some of the greats that you've watched and covered?
Great run. You know, really epic, historical, leading them to the franchise's first NBA championship. Statistically elite. You know, I always struggle when it comes to ranking things amongst other finalists because, you know, having covered the sport for 33 years, you know, I think about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think about Shaq, I think about Akeem Olajuwon, I think about some of those guys, and you know, it's really hard, but he's certainly, I think, when you look at maybe the top 15 of NBA performances by an individual, I would have to say it's a top 15 performance.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Which is still really good, right? When you look at the names, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Wilt, Russell, Shaq, Jabbar, Kareem. I mean, to say it's the top 5, I don't know about that, but maybe in that next group, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And there was so much conversation of this Denver run. You know, Mike Malone, we need our respect. And then you had people say, well, you know, Jokic, well, he didn't face tough competition, or the game is different now. And, you know, it just seemed like there was a lot of people trying to discredit his run, his MVP. Is he a true MVP? Is he stat padding? What did you make of all the noise that surrounded Jokic this year?
Man, I think Jokic fans are really sensitive. I understand why. And, you know, up until a couple of days ago, he and Steve Nash were the only 2-time MVPs never to win an NBA championship. Joker's off that list now. But I thought, you know, it's a subjective award. You know, you got to evaluate around individual numbers, around team numbers. I thought Embiid was the MVP this year. I thought he was the MVP last year. I thought Joker's year was actually better this year than either of his previous 2 MVP awards. I thought the improvement that he made defensively this year was a little bit more pronounced than in the previous 2 years when he won it. So, you know, people say that, you know, he carried them last year. They were 6th and he deserved MVP. You know, certainly in the running, but when I think about carrying a team, I think about 2006, 2007 LeBron James as a 22-year-old carrying his team to the NBA Finals. Bro, can you even name the other 4 starters on that team?
Truly.
So there you go when it comes to carrying, right? You got to work on this one.
Yeah. I think did Boobie Gibson start? I did run into Boobie Gibson in Cleveland when I was covering the Knicks.
He was on that team.
He was on that team, right?
Boobie, Drew Gooden, maybe Sasha Pavlovich.
Wasn't Varejao on that team too?
Varejao. Yeah.
But I mean, for LeBron to do that at 22, so when people say that Joker carried his team, he did to a degree, yes.
Yeah.
But when I think carrying, I think LeBron carrying, right? So, you know, listen, everybody's got a different perspective of history and where things fit. Unquestionably an elite player historically. And, you know, 2-time MVP's got a ring now.
Absolutely. And then, Mark, I got to ask you about Jokic's running mate, also your fellow countryman, Jamal Murray. How about his bounce back this season after tearing his ACL the year prior?
It's wild, man, because I can remember last year after a late regular season game in Los Angeles when Denver played them, walking back to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel with Jamal, just the two of us. And he was contemplating at the time whether he should come back and play in the playoffs. And I looked him dead in the eye. I said, bro, are you good with this? You ready? And he just kind of shook his head, said, no, I don't think I'm going to be there. I don't think I'm going to do it. And to see him wrestling with the doubt that was going on in his mind at the time, fast forward a year and a month or two to where he is now, an NBA champion, and working his way through the rust, through the process to come back. I mean, I said around the All-Star break, I said, you know what? I really think Denver should have 3 All-Stars. And people laughed at me. I thought it should have been Joker, Jamal, and Aaron Gordon. And I said, why not? They had the best record in the NBA, and they got the top players. So winning has to count for something, right? So, I looked at Jamal at the time and I thought, yeah, I think he deserves to be an All-Star. But man, to see the clutch performances that he had along the way, and just another quality guy too, who still is, I think, has a little bit more upside to play out in his career. And I got to tell you this story about Jamal Murray. And I think it's partly why they have such great culture inside that Denver locker room. I have a daughter who plays basketball at San Jose State University who did her ACL at the exact same time as Jamal did. And we were talking about it one day. And he says, Mark, he says, Jones, he says, let's FaceTime her. Let me talk to her, man. I got to gas her up a little bit. And it was such a sweet moment that he was thinking about somebody else at the time during his comeback. It speaks to the quality of locker room they have and the type of person that Jamal Murray is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw that the toll that journey took on him, from tearing the ACL to having doubts about his own future with the organization. Mike Malone talking about how Jamal Murray thought, hey, you guys are going to, toss me to the side of the road or trade me. Yeah. And you saw the emotion after that game. As soon as they won, he's emotional. He's emotional up there on the podium. That's the unscripted part of sports. What we truly enjoy, that story from overcoming adversity and the trials and tribulations, and ultimately hoisting up that O'Brien trophy. And during that process, establishing himself as an elite shot creator, man. I mean, some of the buckets that I saw Jamal Murray hitting in the playoffs, period. Yeah, he really raised his game, man.
That I think teams in the Western Conference now are going to have to recruit and sign free agents and scheme accordingly subsequently to try and slow down that two-man Murray dance that they have with that elbow action. Joker leads the NBA, I think, in elbow touches, elbow scoring, and some of the play actions that they run off of the elbow with those two have become unstoppable. I think between those two and the Embiid-Harden two-man game, those were the two most prolific two-man actions statistically in the NBA this year. And I know in the Western Conference, people are going to have to deal with that now because they're not going anywhere. They're both built for the future. They both signed for a few more years. Long-term, those are the two main cogs. And that I love the way that they play basketball. It's a very unselfish ball movement, player movement. Everybody eats.
I love everything about it. I love that offense. It's even like what you see with the Kings too. Why I like their offense so much, because a lot of off-ball movement. I like watching good offense because it really is like a dance and everyone's in rhythm and they know where everyone should be on the floor. But again, sticking with Jamal Murray, it's crazy to think that this guy has not won any accolades like an All-NBA, an All-Star. Where do you see that? Like, do you see that in his future, like for next season and stuff like that? I mean, we talk about him having to get, the recognition now as a player in that two-man game, but what do you see for his future right now?
Yeah, I think anytime that you win an NBA championship, your ability to claim an all-star status goes up regardless. I mean, I think the same thing goes for Aaron Gordon too. But certainly Jamal with his numbers throughout the series. It's so difficult in the Western Conference, right? When you look at the guards, there's not a lot of first timers. Our guy in Sacramento this past season, De'Aaron Fox, was a first timer. He broke in, and I truly believe that it's going to be Jamal's turn to break in next year. The issue becomes, if somebody comes in, somebody's going to come off. So who's that going to be? You've got Steph, you've got Dame, you've got Ja. I mean, it's so difficult. You've got Devin Booker. I mean, who are you going to leave off if you're adding Jamal Murray to the equation? But hey, listen, he's walking around with a championship ring now. So outside of Steph, nobody else can say that in the Western Conference and say, I'm coming off. Instead, Booker can't, amongst others.
This is the NBA Report. CP the franchise, Alex Rotaros on the ones and twos. And we have a special guest, Mark Jones of ESPN, joining us, man. A great, great podcast. And we certainly thank him for his time. Mark, on the Miami side of things, no question, a remarkable playoff run. The 8th seed, on their backs in the play-in game, losing one game, losing in the fourth quarter to Chicago, steamrolling the Bucks, beating the Knicks. Three up on the Celtics, 3 down, and still washing them in game 7 and making it all the way here. I also thought, the Jokic narrative was interesting, but also the Butler narrative was very interesting because we saw him 37 points per game against the Bucks. We saw those heroics, but since that series, it didn't really seem like he imposed his will on these series, especially in the finals. What do you make of the Butler narrative here where, there's some Miami fans that felt like he didn't do too much? What do you make of that?
Yeah, Jimmy's phenomenal. I mean, he is one of the top 10 players in the NBA. And the reason I say that is because he has unbridled unselfishness. He really only cares about team success. And Jimmy, unlike a lot of the quote unquote elite players that we consider in this game, for me, Casey, I consider elite players guys who give it to you at both ends of the floor. When we cover basketball, when we cover the NBA, we don't talk enough about impacting the defensive end of the floor. There's a lot of guys that are scoring 25 points a game that their opponents would send a limo to the airport to make sure they get to the arena so they can get their 20 against them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a lot of elite players that don't give it to you at that end of the floor. Jimmy Butler will always give it to you at that end of the floor. As for the finals run in particular, and even the Boston series before that, I felt that there was a little bit of a drop-off statistically in efficiency for Jimmy. And to be honest with you, I'm going to say this. There is part of the Jimmy Butler narrative that is still going to play out because I don't think we know everything right now about his playoff performance. I just I just think it's going to play out. I just think that there were circumstances that we probably don't know about that a month or two from now we're going to know about, and it will be, oh wow. And I don't mean that in any way to discount from what the Denver Nuggets did. Let me make that clear. They deserve to win. They were the better team. I don't think we saw peak Jimmy Butler for a reason that we are not fully aware of yet. And I tell you what, in 2 months, 3 months, whenever it is, you guys circle back with me and clip and save this moment.
Let's do it.
And you'll say, okay, all right, Mark.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, Mark, with that being said, and we'll probably find out, as you're saying, more about the Jimmy Butler situation, then what do you make of the entirety of this Miami Heat run then?
Unbelievable still. I mean, to look what the team did against Milwaukee, the team with the best record in the NBA, and then to finish, the Knicks in between, finish off with Boston, winning in Boston in Game 7. I think it really, we hear about Heat culture so much, right? And it's kind of treated as a cliche. But, I used to do sideline reporting for the Miami Heat, and I used to host their pregame studio show back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Heat culture is real. Let me give you a story about what it means to even star players to come in and be part of it and to want to buy into what they have. Jimmy Butler, 4 years ago, on his first day in Miami, Pat Riley meets him in the parking lot, in the underground parking, walks him right into their facility. They go right to the scale. Pat Riley takes off his shoes, weighs himself, looks at the number on the scale, looks at Jimmy and says, "Hey, I'm at my weight, your turn." Jimmy, true story now. It's true. I know this for a fact. Jimmy now takes off his shirt, takes off his shorts, empties out his pockets, and steps on the scale, and he made his weight by a pound. Wow. He turns to Pat and said, "I'm with you, coach. I'm ready." So it was important for Jimmy Butler to show up on that day and know that he had to meet the expectation right away. That doesn't happen at all 30 franchises. You don't have a star player with that kind of attitude, that kind of fit. So that kind of attitude is what I think overall, I'll get back to your question, that's what fueled this Miami run. Every one of those guys is like that. They got to know that once a week, guards got to meet their 6% body fat, wings got to meet their 8% body fat, and bigs got to meet their 10% body fat, or else the team is going into their pockets. And, when you have guys that buy into that, anything's possible. And I thought we saw the result of that. Had they gotten, a couple breaks injury-wise, you got Tyler Hero, who's 21 points sitting on the bench. Might the series have been different? Who knows? But I still think that this is a run for Miami that is as impressive as the one they made in the bubble in 2020, ended up losing to the Los Angeles Lakers. It really is when you look at, where they came from and where they ended up. And hey, listen, Denver had to work in those 5 games to win it. It was not a tough one.
They had to earn it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why when at the end of the day, you look at what this Heat team did, and it's just very impressive from the coaching, from the players. Everyone they're also locked in. And you saw that with both teams, but with Miami, for the players to do what they had to do, that from the top down, they have to all be in sync, as you so eloquently said.
And another takeaway too is I think we saw the fact that Erik Spoelstra is really an elite coach in the NBA. He really is.
Absolutely.
To take that team minus some of their key resources, not to mention Victor Oladipo was injured too, who was a key during the year. To take what he had and motivate, push, prod, and get them to the finals was a great thing. And, think about this, guys. Erik Spoelstra has never won NBA Coach of the Year. He's never won Coach of the Year. I mean, what are we doing here?
It's crazy.
It's insane.
Right? I mean, people say, oh, yeah, he won with LeBron. Hey, listen, I always say he had those 3 guys, and I'm a Miami-Dade County resident. I've been a season ticket holder with Miami Heat since day one on the other side of Biscayne Boulevard on 8th Street when I had cheap seats up in a section 104, and I would reach in my pocket and find pocket lint. I didn't have a lot of money. I had the cheap seats. I was a season ticket holder back then. But it can be harder to coach a lot of talent as opposed to minimal talent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. The egos, I think, have to be factored in because all 3 of those guys, between Bosh, Wade, LeBron, those guys all know they can take the last shot. Those guys all are at the top of their game, and you're telling them they all have to sacrifice in order to make that team better because they were all focal points of their own teams at one point. And I asked them to come together. That's some elite coaching right there to be able to talk to those guys.
Sure. And, here's a nice little side note. You guys might have heard the story during the year. I told this story last year when he signed a 2-way contract, and then it was converted with Caleb Martin and J. Cole. If Caron Butler doesn't get a phone call from J. Cole, who saw Caleb Martin working out in the gym where they both worked out in Charlotte after he'd been released by the Hornets, part of this run maybe doesn't happen because of his great play,
Absolutely. But Mark, from talking about all these current players like Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, seeing how they performed. What's the future like for Miami right now?
Wow, well, they got some big decisions coming up with, like you mentioned, Gabe Vincent, Strus. These guys are free agents. How much can they pay them? How much are they willing to pay them to retain either both or one of them? Historically, the Miami Heat have not ventured deep into the luxury tax a lot, so that might give us a clue as to what direction they're heading in. But they've already got a lot of money sunk in Duncan Robinson's deal. So I think it becomes clear at some point that you can't pay both Vincent and Strus. And I'm not sure who you keep amongst those guys. Might they move some of the deck chairs around and, try and get off of Kyle Lowry maybe? There's been some, reported rumors about that. Whatever it is, they'll keep one of those guys, and Pat Riley will go star hunting, because that's the one thing that you have to love about the Miami Heat. They never say the word rebuild. They're not into process, follow the process. Pat Riley is going to go big game hunting if he hasn't already. Him and Andy Ellisberg, his salary cap expert, who's another lifer in terms of the Heat organization, they're going to have another big star on the roster by the time we talk again in October or September.
Could it be Dame? Is Dame Dallas on your radar, Mark?
Hey, as long as Dame gets me in the studio, man, I'm good with it. You know what I mean? We can go bars, man. I've been trying to work Dame for a little collab. Hey, listen, if I know you guys got connects with Chuck D, you had him on recently.
Yes.
If I give a little Chuck D, Dame, throw me in the background. Hey, I'll do anything.
We'll make it happen, man. We'll definitely make it happen. A couple more for you, Mark. As you mentioned, you've been a long time Heat season ticket holder back in the old Miami arena. Now, back in those days, back in my day, a guy named Patrick Ewing and his band of merry men used to come in there and give the Heat that work. What were some of your earliest memories of those battles in the 90s, man? Knicks and Heat.
I think about walk in your trap, take over your trap, man. Oh, man. Hey, some of the good brawls actually happened up in the stands. I was at the game right in front of PJ Brown when he suplexed Charlie.
Wow.
Charlie, my neighbor up in Stamford, Connecticut, when I lived in Connecticut in the studio show. These are two of the nicest guys that you'll ever find in the NBA, and one guy is suplexing the other. That's how vitriolic that playoff series was, and I have fantastic memories from that. I mean, I remember going into the Heat locker room after that melee, and Tim Hardaway was sitting in his cubicle, and he calls me over, and he says, "Mark, you know how Tim talks. It's going to be very interesting to see who's going to play next game. It's going to be very interesting." I just that was great basketball. Every possession mattered. Yeah. Every possession was like life or death. When Allen Houston's shot rolled around and fell, it was like a Disney movie with everything happening in slow motion, where you get a snapshot of everyone's face in the crowd. And those were really life or death series. And hey, this year's Knicks Heat series was pretty exciting too.
Yeah, it was, man. And it really brought us back. And, I thought that the Knicks just didn't have enough offense there, but Brunson's brilliance. And how about your fellow countryman, RJ Barrett? I thought RJ had some good games in that series. What did you think about those two guys with the Knicks this year?
I love Brunson. I mean, we saw glimpses of it last year in the playoffs, his ability to run a team on his own when Luka was out with Dallas. And, I think he made the right move coming to New York. I think it's a great fit. I think he showed the requisite leadership to take this team to the next level. I love the fact that in the two-man game, Julius Randle told me that he did a lot of work last summer trying to play out of the pocket because he knew it was going to be a lot of pick and roll basketball with him and Jaylen. And I think there's a couple more steps to be taken by both him and RJ. I think efficiency is a little bit of an issue for Barrett, but he's shown a willingness over the last couple of years to get into the gym with his trainer, Drew Hanlon, and work on his shooting. He's still, just 5 years into the NBA. There's a lot of growth there for him. And, I think there's a lot of improvement. I like what the Knicks did this year. The 5 spot with Mitchell Robinson and, your young cat out of Texas. His name slips me right now. Was hurt at the end of the year. You're back.
Sims, Jericho.
Yeah, Jericho. I love Jericho Sims.
Yeah,
love Jericho Sims. I think the Knicks could take another step next year. I think it comes down to them being able to maybe play with a little bit more pace because they were in the bottom quarter of teams with pace, and I think when you play with less pace, it becomes harder sometimes to score in the half court.
Oh, absolutely, man. And we're talking to a longtime ESPN broadcaster, Mark Jones. And Mark, we know we're pressed for time, but really just a couple questions on a great and great career, man. And one is, you've covered so many sports at the collegiate level, at the pro level. What does that mean for you to be so versatile and this stage in the game? How do you stay sharp? Like, how do you stay on top of things?
Man, you know what? I think being able to, guys, remain your authentic self is really important. To be able to be passionate about what you do and immerse yourself. I consider myself an NBA guy. So, down here in Miami, every other day, I'm at either Stan Remy's gym, watching guys work out, or Ronnie Taylor's has a gym not far from my home here in Miami. They play 5-on-5 every Thursday, every Wednesday, and see a bunch of your Knicks down here working out, see a bunch of the Heat guys working out, guys come in from out of town, and just be able to sit down with guys after they've finished their workouts and chop it up and stay close to the game. Because I think what has kept me really excited about this after 33 years at ESPN is it's still a lot of fun. I like to get on the Mike and look forward to working with Doris Burke or Hubie Brown or Mark Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy, whoever it is, and have some fun, be able to, talk about strategies. And, if you're in the gym with these players, what the play calls are, what the strategies and tactics are, and to be able to stay true to the culture too, man. Like I like having fun during basketball games. I like to think that, broadcasting is really broadcasting, that you speak to everyone in the audience. And I like to have fun with some of my African Americanisms. That's become a little bit of a signature with me over the years. Hey, listen, it hasn't been easy, man, because back when I first came into the business, back in 1991, when I first said, doing a college football game, take it to the house, there were people at ABC that wanted to run me out of TV because they're like, hey, what's he talking about? Nobody knows what he's talking about. Nobody understands him. Now, when you look at college football, when there's a touchdown in college football, the graphic across the bottom of the screen says to the house. So there have been some cultural issues I've had to fight through, but I was never going to give up on being myself. When I talk about De'Aaron Fox being on some Black Air Force energy, there's a group of people that know what the heck I'm talking about.
If you're from New York, you definitely know what that energy is all about.
Exactly, right? And that I like to consider that's who I am. I see sometimes in social media, you see criticisms and you're like, who does Mark Jones think he's talking about? Or he's 60 years old talking about, but guys, you'll find me on the corner hanging on the block. I tell people, don't be misled by the Gucci spot.
That's right. Go.
Dolce Gabbana. I'm out there a little bit.
You had one that sent NBA Twitter, the NBA world ablaze. It was the Boston Celtics against the Philadelphia 76ers. And you said the two J's smoking that Philadelphia pack tonight. And I heard that on airwaves. I was like, did Mark Jones just say that?
Take. I was like, wait, did I just say
did Mark Jones just really say that on the airwaves? I was rolling.
You know what? People, I appreciate that. People ask me, do you write these down? Do you have them planned? I really don't, but At the moment I heard 2 J's come off my lips, you know what's coming next, right? 2 J's?
It only
Come
makes
on.
sense,
man, here we go.
That would have been journalistic malpractice if I say something.
A little double entendre, man. A little double entendre, man. And Mark, in 30 plus years in the game, you covered many sports, but is there a mentor or two that really helped springboard your career that you really look back on and say, this was the person that really helped me?
You know what? I remember I worked at TSN in Toronto for 4 years before I got my gig at ESPN for the next 33 with God's mercy and blessings. I remember going down to, and I used to cover the Toronto Blue Jays, their magazine show when I was working in Toronto. And one day I went down to the American League Championship Series, and Bryant Gumbel was there covering it for NBC. And I introduced myself to him. I said, Mr. Gumbel, my goal is to call big games like you one day, maybe host the Olympics, call NBA games, do the NBA finals like you do. And he said, young man, I watched your sportscast last night on TSN. I think you're ready. And in that moment, he blew me away. And he was a real inspiration for me at the time, and kind of followed his blueprint in terms of trying to be journalistic, being very impeccable and precise with your words, and having a little bit of fun too, just being me. And he has been kind of a roadmap through the years. I worked with Brent Musburger earlier in my career at ESPN and ABC, who was phenomenal in terms of watching him doing scene sets and game opens and things like that as well. And Brent was always very helpful. And Dick Vermeil was somebody who, when it comes to college football, I'll never forget this guy. It's a great story. After my first year of doing college football at ABC and ESPN, Dick Vermeil calls me up in June and says, hey, Mark, I know they plan on making you go from sidelines to play-by-play. Why don't you come down to my home here in Philadelphia, and we'll go over my old Eagles playbook. I'll teach you some terminology, and you'll be 100% ahead of most play-by-play guys. So went down to his home for 4 or 5 days, and his wife Carol and him had me in their home, and we would study film during the day. And that college football season was very successful for me and allowed me to be where I am now on the college football roadmap.
Wow. Some legendary names, man. Legendary names.
I've been blessed, man. 33 years this June with ESPN. And somebody told me the other day that only Dick Vitale has been on the longer than me at ESPN. So I've worked with some real talented people that have helped me along the way.
Incredible, man. And on the league, is there a favorite player that you enjoy calling these games for as you go through your travels each season?
Man, you know what? I love all 30 teams in the NBA. They have a favorite player for me. If it's the Knicks, it's going to be Brunson or Randle. If it's the Sacramento Kings, I love watching De'Aaron Fox. His speed can be spellbinding at times. Sabonis, Malik Monk is another guy that's so exciting to watch in Sacramento. And, we mentioned Jamal Murray a little bit earlier. That entire OKC team with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, what he's done.
Another Canadian, man.
Yeah. There's some great young talent on the come up right now. And that's why, you never know from year to year what it's going to look like. And that's part of the fun and the adventure of being courtside. I got the best seat in the house, man. Courtside. I love getting to the arena early and speaking to guys. And, being able to tell their stories is what really matters to me, getting to know guys. And I think sometimes in sports, we objectify players and reduce them to stats, points, rebounds, and assists, as opposed to talking about the work that goes into it or their journey and taking a snapshot of where they are now in that journey. I think being able to humanize guys during the course of a game is very important.
I agree, man. And you do a great job, and continued success to you. We definitely appreciate the time that you gave us. Hopefully on the next one, we'll bring Chuck in. Chuck's traveling all over the place. So we'll get Chuck in. We'll try to line up, that remix with Dame Dallas. We'll try to make something happen, man.
Hey, if they makes it to Miami, we'll make that happen. That'd be fun. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Chuck's an idol of mine, man. You know that, right? That's my era. I'm 60 years old, man. That's, Don't Believe the Hype. Welcome to the Terror Dome.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, he's been
Fight
a huge
Fight the Power to me is still the best rap song ever. With all due apologies to everybody else.
True indeed, man. Chuck has been the biggest champion of our wave, both on Knicks Fan TV and on the NBA Report. He supports us. He's in our live chat before we even start the show after every Knick game. So, he's just been a great mentor of mine as well, man. So we certainly share those sentiments.
I tell you, last time I came to New York City to do a Knicks game, I was walking around 34th and 7th looking for the old PE T-shirt with the scope on it. I couldn't find any, man, but I'm still looking. I don't know if there's a merch site or anything like that. But
wow. Well, yeah, we'll hit him up. Hey, maybe he might make one for you himself, man. He's a great artist as well, man. So, yeah.
Hey, next year when you guys have the Sacramento Kings, we got to come on and do a special edition.
Let's do it. Let's preview the game. And
awesome.
Mark, like I said, man, thanks again for the time. Enjoy the weekend and enjoy the off season, man.
There is no off season, but I will anyway.
Mark gets it. There's only an on season, CP. Only an on season.
Well, it could be summer league too, right? Are you going to be covering summer league, right?
I'll be calling all the games out at summer league, man. I'll be talking about the New York Knicks and gassing you guys up.
Absolutely, man. So yeah, hey, I'll reach out when I'm there. And thanks again, man.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Keep up the fantastic work. Love you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
All right. That was the great Mark Jones, ladies and gentlemen of ESPN, man. We definitely appreciate him for his time. We had a great show today. We had Keith Smith, our NBA offseason preview. Lots of news and rumors going around, man. And we had the great Mark Jones out. So big show for the NBA Report, man. I'm telling these people right now, you better tell a friend to tell a friend, because by the time this season starts, it's going to be the number one show for the fans by the fans. We're putting it out there. We're putting that energy out there.
Absolutely. That's the only thing you can do is put that energy out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
TM in the chat, shout out to our King Mod, says, we don't have an off season anymore either, CP and Alex. And that's a fact. We don't.
There is no off season. There is no off season, man. No breaks, no off season. We're going to reset the screen. So to everybody in the chat, once again, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. We're going to wrap up with this Shams report. So just give us a second here. Okay. Here we go. So Daniel, this is good for now, but Daniel, when you get a chance to just reset to the 2-panel. So Shams reporting here, Al, that the Washington Wizards and Bradley Beal will work together to find a trade for the 3-time All-Star if the team elects to reset the roster in the near future. I mean, that seems like the future is now, right?
Yeah, I wish Keith was still on the show so we could talk about this.
Yeah. Well, Keith thought Kuzma was gone.
Yeah.
He said Porzingis looks like Porzingis is going to take the money and maybe there's a trade down the road.
Yeah. I mean, KP taking the money at this point makes a lot of sense. 36 million. I didn't think he was going to, if he was going to opt out, it was going to stay with the Wizards. He's going to get a bigger deal, but I didn't think he would just leave 36 million on the table like that. But to see it, even, Woj is getting in the mix as well.
What's he saying?
Let's see. I was right. What Woj tweeted this: ESPN sources, as rivals begin reaching out to the Wizards to explore possibility of trading for All-Star guard Bradley Beal, President Michael Winger and Beal's agent Mark Bartlestein of Priority Sports are staying in close contact to discuss scenarios presented to franchise. After completing first season of a 5-year, $251 million contract, Beal's unique standing as NBA's only current player to have a no-trade clause negotiated into his deal gives him the ability to control not only possible destinations, but how a potential package to acquire Beal impacts his ability to play for a contender.
Yeah, he's out of there. See you later. See you later.
It's going to be interesting, man. How do you take on this $50 million contract that he has to build a contender with the way the cap is?
Right.
It's nasty.
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 It is
Really
nasty, man. Yeah, who takes them on? Is it the Knicks? You know, who else can take that on?
Would you want Bradley Beal on the Knicks?
I want Bradley Beal, the player. I wouldn't want Bradley Beal, the injury-prone player, the player making $50 million who is injury-prone. That's tough. But he's a bucket. No question about it. He's
100%.
I like Bradley Beal. I like his game, but he's, is he going to be around?
That's the question.
Tibbs is playing. You playing all 82, man.
Can't give up Quentin Grimes if you're going to have Bradley Beal. I'm going to say that right now.
I can't give up Grimes. I'm Grimes Hive 1 to a T, man.
The thing is, though, like if you get like Beal is okay defensively, but if you're talking about you're going to need some sort of depth and somebody who can, be available for you. I just can't see how you give up Grimes, who was the starting 2 guard, played most of the season. It's just tough.
Man. I can't give up Q Grimes. How about Miami? Can Miami find the salary between Hero? How much did Lowry make this year? Let's look up Kyle Lowry's. We in overtime in the front office report here. Okay, here we go.
Oh yeah, the front office report
and the NBA report. How much is Kyle Lowry making this year? Kyle Lowry is making. So tell everybody in the chat, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Okay, Kyle Lowry. Ooh, he's at 29.
29.
He's at damn. They signed him to a 3-year, $85 million contract. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and he's going into the last year of his contract being at 29. So that covers for about half of what Beal's making now. But
and then let's see, Hero. Hero's at 29. He's at 27 starting next year. So there you go.
Yeah, they're going to want to have to take a young player. And you probably have to take a guy who's going to only have to be on your contract for 1 year.
Yeah.
I mean, oof. Or you try to see if you could finagle Robinson in there instead because he's got the longer deal.
It's true. Interesting, man. Interesting. So we do have the screens up. So let's reset. Salute to NBA Nation. Hit that thumbs up button for you boys. CP the franchise here. Alex Retards on the 1s and 2s. Breaking news. Woj and Shams, the arms race in the offseason has begun, and they are both stating that the Washington Wizards are willing to work with Bradley Beal on a trade should they pursue a full-blown rebuild. Now Shams is saying in the future. I think it's now. I think Bradley Beal will be traded in the offseason. So add Bradley Beal to this offseason. That already includes James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Chris Paul. Could Zion get traded? This is going to be a blockbuster offseason, man. When you think about the names out there, a big draft, and then teams trying to maneuver to get healthy with their salary cap. Interesting indeed, man. Now, Al, let's talk about some of the possibilities for teams in terms of Bradley Beal, right? We talked about Miami, just the NBA Finals. We did put Dame over there, but they do have the salary to make it work. They have Lowry. They have Hero, who's a young player the Wizards may want. Maybe it's Robinson and his salary. So, some sort of machination there. Plus, they do have some draft picks to dangle as well. Could that be the play? Well, he has to waive his no trade clause to go there. Could that be the play?
That's one team because they are a contender, right? They do have the money to do it. I think a team he should have gone to in the past where his name was linked to was Denver. There was a lot of talks about him, but he should have gone there, in my opinion. But if you just think about teams that he can agree to, in Miami, they don't even have to have the draft picks because he still has to agree to it, right? So you don't even have to say, hey, OKC could potentially give the best deal, right? Because they have all the draft picks and everything, but he can say no. So Washington is not going to come out of this being victorious out of this deal. So we don't have to think of that in that nature, as Woj already reported. So Miami, is it the Clippers? Is it the Lakers? Are those two teams? Add Bradley Beal to the Lakers, give him more a lethal shooter.
Yeah, but what salary? How are they going to make $50 million to get out of there?
So let me pull up their salaries right now.
Yeah.
And see what they got. Do you pay Austin Reeves and make it work?
Pay max out Austin Reeves and send them to the Wizards. Oh man, if I'm Austin Reeves, I say no, no thanks on the offer. I mean, yeah, I don't see how they make it work. Wizards don't want D'Lo.
What's crazy is that Lakers. So the Lakers right now, they have no one really on the books for next season.
Yeah,
outside of LeBron James, Anthony Davis, you have Malik Beasley for $16.5 million, which is a team option, so they can cut that. Mo Bamba, if they want to pick up that option, or no, I'm sorry, not pick it up. It's not fully guaranteed, but he has 10.3, but it's not fully guaranteed. You have Jared Vanderbilt, who has 4.6, which is also not fully guaranteed.
Yeah,
and the only other guy that's on the books is Max Christie. So really, everyone that's guaranteed for next season is LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Max Christie. That is the team of your 2023-2024 Lakers for right now. So they actually would have, I guess they could put that money together to go get somebody like Bradley Beal, but they don't have the assets on the books right now unless they're going to sign guys. Do you extend someone like D'Angelo Russell because he was making 31 this past season? Do you extend him for a similar number to go do that?
He's a bum. What is his name taking that?
But they don't have to agree, right?
Well,
if you want to move Bradley Beal, you don't. This is the tricky situation with a no trade clause. We went through the CP as Knicks fans.
He can force his way.
We saw this with Melo, right?
He can
no trade clause and how difficult it was.
He can force his way.
Is it the Clippers? The Clippers got the money. It's do you want to go be in cap hell still?
Yeah. I don't see it. Raptors appear to be in full-blown rebuild. I don't see that. I don't see him waiving. Where is he going to waive his no trade clause to go? It's not the Suns. I don't think the Lakers. I mean, damn. If Bradley Beal do that to the Wizards, like, hey, listen, you're going to have to take D'Angelo Russell in a sign and trade. It looks like Bradley Beal and that Wizards organization have had a great relationship. I don't think he does that to him. Let's go through. Boston. Tatum, the St. Louis connection. The St. Louis connection. Does Brown get his money?
That would be an option.
Go to the Wizards. You reunite the St. Louis boys up in Beantown.
That's always been discussed, right? Because of Tatum and Beal's connection back to their hometown. That's something you could extend Brown, pay him. He'd be making close to that, if not that, and then you could trade him.
Tatum and Beal up in Boston.
Is that what you want, though? If you're Boston, let's think about that one. Let's think about that one if you're Boston. So now you just went to the finals 2 seasons ago. You made it back again with the duo that you said can take you to the mountaintop. You've been in 2-3 Eastern Conference Finals so far. At minimum, you're making it to the second round. You've seen this team go to the finals, where Jaylen Brown was actually that guy that showed up for most of the finals.
Yeah.
Now what you're going to say if you're Boston, we believe in Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
Who can't stay healthy.
He's our guy.
And that's our guy because Tatum's got the connection and we want to make Tatum happy.
That's
the direction.
Look, I think Boston is a legitimate candidate here. It's not Milwaukee. It's not. I'm going through each division. It's not Milwaukee. It's not the Pacers. It's not the Pistons. Not the Cavs. Not the Cavs. It's not the Bulls. He's not going to the Bulls. It was not the Magic. Not the Hornets. Not the Hawks. So right now I got Heat and Celtics. Not the Warriors, not the Clippers, not the Suns. Kings? Would he go to Sacktown?
Let's look at their contract situation.
Yeah. Let's take a look. So to everybody in the chat, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Trying to figure out if Bradley Beal will go anywhere but the Knicks.
Let's see.
Rashawn Holmes, anybody interested?
Kings are under the cap right now.
Yeah.
As of right now, going to the next season, they have 107 without drafting or anything. They have 107 on their book, so they're way under the 134 threshold. To make that contract, to make that type of deal, Rashawn Holmes is making 12. Kevin Huerter's making 15. You'd have to throw in somebody like Malik Monk. This is all presuming if you want to keep, if you're going to stick with De'Aaron Fox, you're going to keep Sabonis. You're then looking at Huerter, Rashawn Holmes, Malik Monk, Keegan Murray. These are the guys that would make up that type of money to go get someone like Beal to match that contract.
Okay. How does Brad and his lady like Sacramento? Are they fans of Sacramento?
You're close to San Francisco. You can take a drive down. You can go to wine country. Sonoma's not too far.
Denver, no. Minnesota, no. OKC, no. How about Portland? Portland's got the number 3 pick. They're trying to keep Dame happy. Let's take a look at some salaries here. Does Portland work? And would he be interested in going there?
So now you have essentially a retooled version of what you had before.
Yeah. Right. You know, the thing is Portland, I mean, they got Simons, the number 3 pick. Nurkic is making 15. They don't have much else. It's kind of tough. Nurkic, Simons, that's 37 right there.
Yeah, add like Shadon Sharp, Nazir Little to bump it up. Because remember, you have to be within that 5 million like wiggle room of like being less than or over to make it work. So like, is that the deal? You trade Simons, you trade the number 3 overall pick, Nurkic. Well, then who's your center?
You figure it out later. That's if he wants to go.
You go out and you get Naz Reid.
Yeah. Utah, no. How about do the Rockets have salary for him? And would he want to go there? Would he want to play with Udoka?
Does James Harden and Bradley Beal meet in Houston?
Yeah. Houston Rockets. Dallas?
Dallas.
Can Dallas make it work?
Let's see what they got on their books.
Timmy, a little send Bertans back. That's 35 right there. But it's really not what they need anyway, man. I mean, unless they lose Kyrie, I don't know.
See, this is where I'm starting. This is where you, as a player, I get like Beal wanting to protect himself, but when you get that much money, now you just make it 10 times harder to be dealt. True.
Well, could be the Knicks. We'll see. We'll talk about it. Let's table the conversation here. We'll move it to Friday. We had a great show, Daniel. Let's hit the outro music. Let's move this over to Friday. I'm gonna hit up my guy. We'll see if we can get some Wizards people on here on Friday and go forward, man. All right, but great show, Daniel. If you could throw the solo on me, man. Great show, everybody, man. Salute to our guest for today, Keith Smith. We want to thank Mark Jones for their time, and we want to thank all the fans for tapping in. We just crossed the 1,000 subscriber threshold, and we'll table this for Friday, man. Bradley Beal, where is he going? Let's get it popping, man. Friday, we'll be back around 12:30. And we definitely thank everybody for tapping in, man. I thought we had a fantastic show. Remember that the show will be available in audio podcast format as well, man. So no reason to miss it. And tap in, man. This is the NBA Report. CP the Franchise, Alex Rotaros signing out. Great show, everybody. Peace.